So you've heard me say a number of times that inclusive marketing is the future of marketing and that eventually we're going to get to a place where we don't even have to refer to inclusive marketing as inclusive marketing because it's just marketing. It's just the way we operate. It's just the way we show up, the way we do business. Well, I have to tell you, and I'm excited to share with you that is already the case with some brands. More and more as I talk to chief marketing officers, CMOs, and business leaders about how they are incorporating inclusive marketing, I am always just so overjoyed whenever I talk to a business leader who shares we don't even really think of it that way. Our marketing is just inclusive by default. That's just the way we do things. So I'm excited to share a very recent conversation I had with the chief marketing officer of the Zumba brand. And she shared with me how Zumba thinks about inclusive marketing, the way they're incorporating within their brands and everything that they do, and how it's enabled them to reach consumers all over the world. So after this short break, you will hear that conversation. Did you know that most businesses only use 20% of their data? That's like reading a book with most of the pages torn out or paying for a coffee that's just 1/5 full. Point is, you miss a lot unless you use HubSpot. Their customer platform gives you access to the data you need to grow your business. The insights trapped in emails, call logs, and transcripts, all that unstructured data that makes all the difference. Because when you know more, you grow more. And when you get a full cup of coffee, you can do more too. But I digress. Visit HubSpot.com today. Hey, Carolina, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I am good, Sonia. Thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Totally my pleasure. Now, it's been a long time since I've been to a Zumba class, but as I was prepping for this, I was like, I need to get back to it. It was amazing. I've always loved Zumba. It's always been a lot of fun.
When did you go?
It's been at least 10 years.
Oh, wow. So you needed to reconnect and remind
Yes.
yourself how much fun it is.
Yes. So definitely need to do that. So, all right. Well, I know who you are. And that's why we're starting talking about Zumba. But for the people who don't know who you are just yet, tell the people who are you and what do you do?
So I am obviously Carolina. I am the CMO of Zumba Fitness. Been with the company for long than I can remember, over 10 years now. Quite crazy, quite an adventure. So I've seen it all, with the company and with the brand. Before that, I was in a very different industry. I worked in fashion.
Okay.
At Levi's. I lived in Europe for many, many years prior moving to the US. But I am originally from Brazil. I'm a little Latina girl and married with two lovely kids. And yeah, soccer fan. What else is there to know about me? Love to travel. Every opportunity I get to pack my suitcase and go somewhere, I'll take advantage of that. So kind of in my DNA.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I am familiar with a neighbor of yours in Brazil, Argentina. That's where my husband's from. So I lived there for a couple of years and I visited Brazil. So definitely had a great time whenever I was there. Definitely need to go back.
Yes, there's a very good, healthy rivalry,
Yes.
Brazil and Argentina with soccer. But the reality is that, we really love each other. So
Absolutely.
neighbors.
Absolutely. All right. So I have lots of questions for you because Zumba is such a global brand. And before we dive in too much further into that, I'm curious, what does inclusive marketing mean to you?
I think it's quite interesting that we still have to refer to inclusive marketing and not just marketing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It just seems to be that if you're doing a good job as a marketer, as a brand expert, you're spending a lot of time with your consumer and you're really understanding who they are, at the core.
Yeah.
What do they want? What do they need? What do they look like? What they aspire to be? What they aspire to achieve? How do they talk? How do they want to be talked to? And you're incorporating that in your communication, in your imagery. But more importantly, because I think that's the mistake that I'm seeing a lot these days, is you incorporate it into the product and in the experience.
Yeah.
It's almost like marketing is or should be the easy part, but are you delivering on the experience? Because consumers can see through that stuff today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think for me, it's almost like, well, it's marketing that needs to derive from a product that is very well understood, adopted, and utilized by its audience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I am looking forward to the day where we don't actually have to label it inclusive marketing. It'll just be folded into the ways in which people operate, and it'll be a competency that exists across the board among marketers. Now, I saw that Zumba, like you all say that you've got everybody, you have classes for everybody and everybody. And from your perspective, I just love that. And I was curious if this was really a reflection of your values and about how inclusion is sort of baked into who you are at the core.
Absolutely. But I almost wish I could take credit for that. You know, I tell you that it's the branding and the marketing that is
Mhm.
behind all of this and made it happen. But the reality of Zumba, it's almost happened the other way around.
Okay.
So if you look at Zumba, we are primarily a membership business. A lot of people don't know this about us, right? They think we're the class, but the Zumba company, well, a lot of people don't know Zumba is a brand, but the Zumba corporate and the Zumba company, the way we make money is through the training of our instructors, the training and the
Okay.
licensing of our instructors around the world. Now, what's important to know is that those instructors, they come from all walks of life. So you have people, be taking their certification for a variety of reasons. You have people that do this as a full-time job because they need the income. You have people who do this to stay in shape. You have people who is a side gig. So as you can imagine, that brings in a blend of a very diverse community of instructors where you have lawyers,
Mhm.
teachers, firefighters, hairdressers, chefs, all kinds of primarily women. We are obviously a heavy female program taking these trainings together. And they bring in their students who very often are from the same universe, right? So when
Yeah.
they start teaching, their class very often looks like them.
Okay.
But as time goes by, that class starts to blend in with other classes, other instructors, other Zumba events, and you end up with this melting pot of,
Right.
of people coming together in that class. And I think that what we did, or we were good at Zumba, is that a few years into the program, going into those classes and being like, but we don't look like that. Our videos don't look like that. Our tone of voice doesn't sound like that. And we adjusted.
Okay.
But it was a reflection of what was happened naturally with the product that led us to say, hey, we have to be more intentional here on showing the world how awesome this actually is, right?
Yeah, I love that because it means that you're very consumer led and consumer driven. And I think brands overall, we should all be this way in terms of taking the time to evaluate who our consumers are, what is different about them, what is similar about them, and just what we're noticing. And then just serving the needs of who they are and incorporating that into the way we show up, our marketing, and throughout all the marketing mix, including those experiences in the product, like you mentioned earlier. So I see that you all are in more than 180 countries, 185 countries, I
Yeah.
think it is, around the world, 15 million people. And I'm wondering, because you said it kind of started from a broad diversity of the instructor, and they brought in more people who were like them, and it sort of branched out from there. How do you be inclusive when you have such a broad diversity of people? Because I think sometimes marketers are a little nervous about inclusion because it feels like, how can I possibly include all these people, even though that's not necessarily what we're always asking them to do. But with such a breadth and depth of the people that you're reaching, how are you able to make it so that everyone feels like they belong with you?
I think what this is a really really good question, and it's a hard one because we stumble upon sometimes these conversations of, by doing this, are we going to alienate this person or drive away that person? And it's a healthy thing to always have as a filter, right? You want to make sure that you're keeping a pulse. But the way I tend to approach it, or we've approached it a lot in the past, is what is common to the
Mm,
people in this room?
okay.
What do they all share? So they look different, they sound different, they speak different languages, they want different things. What are the two things that they want when they come to Zumba classes? And Number one, the one thing that was very common to our audience is that they wanted a safe space to work out. And that from the very beginning. Think about my industry, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
fitness, it's one of the most exclusive, how do you say, intimidating industries to be in.
Yeah.
It's that promise of you want to look that perfect, you got to suffer, you got to. So they were all running away a little bit from that message and finding a place where they were rewarded for just showing up and trying and moving, because to a lot of people that's a huge win in
Yeah.
fitness. We forget this, but from couch to class, we say that all the time. That's our mission. We want to get people to move, because it's one of the biggest disease our world has today. People are not moving enough. And the second thing that you do once you identify what's in common to all of them is that you amplify to the external world that, hey, it doesn't matter who you are, you will find the safe space here to start and continue and have a great time in your fitness journey. But to us, it was almost the other way around. What do they have in? Because at the end of the day, there are certain human,
Yeah.
traits and needs that we all have in common. And for women, it was this: can I start here without being judged, fully accepted? And can this be my happy hour? Because I don't have, no matter if you're the lawyer or if you're,
Right.
the teacher, you don't have a lot of time. You have your kids, you have your husband. So give me my happy hour, make that my exercise, and make it safe for me. And that's kind of what the formula has been. And that's the formula. Like if you go into our social, if you go into our website, if you see our millions of videos on YouTube, you will see that reflected
Yeah.
quite a prominent way.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that, oh, you hate the fact that we have to even call it inclusive marketing. I'm wondering how you have been able to infuse this inclusive mindset on your team. So it's just naturally the way you operate versus having to think about, oh, let's target this particular community and that particular community to make sure that they feel like they belong.
I didn't have to educate myself. And I think that's a big thing, because I experienced it myself.
Okay.
I was born in Brazil, where the marketing looked, and every person I admire and looked up to all the way until I was 11 looked like me.
Mhm.
The brown hair, brown eye, morena, lighter skin, middle class Brazilian. It was everywhere. I never felt that I didn't see myself. And then my parents decide that they're going to shift me halfway across the world. And I land in Brussels, Belgium, where at the time, so we're talking now 20, 25 years ago, everybody is blonde with blue eyes,
Mhm.
very, very light skin. I don't speak the language. I don't speak French at the time. I land in a school where I'm fundamentally culturally different than all the kids there. Not in a better, or just different.
Different.
And I quickly realized, for the first time in my life at an age that I could understand, because at 11 and at 12, you can't understand. Oh, wow, I don't fit. What do I have to change about myself to fit here? How am I going to, because I don't dress like them, I don't look like them, I don't talk like them, I don't. The good thing about kids is that we're so resilient, and but it's something that really stood with me. And then with age, I started thinking about back home, how the African Brazilians never saw themselves in everything that I used to see myself. And so it became at a very early age for me something very personal.
Mhm.
And I carried that at Levi's too, where there was a lot of these conversations happening at Levi's. At the time that I was there, was a lot gender related. We
Mhm.
were the men's 501 was the men's brand. How do you transition to women? And then coming into Zumba, it was almost the first time I was seeing a product where the product was in the right place.
Okay.
So it was almost like telling the team, a team that I was already quite receptive to and excited about showing these things, being like, we don't have to fabricate it. We don't have to, like I've done in my past lives. No, no, it's here, guys.
Right.
We just have to show. Convincing management sometimes is more difficult than convincing the team, right?
Mhm.
Because the team, they buy into the passion, they buy into the vision, and you have that passion if you've lived through it. Management will want to hold you accountable, and rightfully so, for the numbers. So that's when the conversation comes in on, yes, we have to be our brand, but we have to make sure we are not letting anybody behind, because we don't want it ultimately to hurt the business. But the
Absolutely.
conversation today is, if you don't do that, you will hurt the business.
For
So
sure. For sure. Okay, I've got another podcast recommendation for you. It's Augmenters, hosted by Julie Meyer and Jimmy Edgerton, and it's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. So on this show, Julie and Jimmy dive into mentoring and explore ways to augment and refresh the mentoring environment. They're using 8 core principles that weave relevant spirit guides and diverse guests, and Julie and Jimmy use a lot of humor and practical tips to help mentors and mentees get further faster together. There's so many great episodes to tune into for this show, but one that you might find especially interesting is their latest episode, number 120, Mentoring Across Gender, Men as Allies and Mentors. Listen to Augmenters wherever you get your podcasts. Now, I love that you brought up your own lived experience, because I think that whenever you have that, it makes you think different. Like, you have kind of a baked in inclusive mindset because you know what it feels like whenever you don't belong. Have you ever had to work with a team where people on the team didn't have that lived experience, and so they didn't necessarily know what that felt like, to educate them on, this is what we want to make sure we don't do to the people that we're serving? Because I think that exists a lot in the marketing industry.
You're absolutely right. And you know where I see this a lot still, not necessarily in teams, because I find that the team, they're a product of the company culture. And if you have the right company culture, they're there. I'm not saying that, I'm sure other colleagues face that challenge with their teams. That's not my case. But I've had that challenge with agencies.
Mm-hmm.
When you reach out to an agency to work on your brand, and the first thing that they want to do is that they want to change your brand, because they're like, oh, but that's not going to be very aspirational. That's not going to be cool enough. Or the amount of times I've heard, this isn't going to be cool enough, you know? And I'm like, well, but this is ultimately who we are. And this is how I can guarantee you 80% of the female population is. So like, why aren't we going there? Oh, but that's not. So I've had a lot more of that resistance actually when working with external agencies, to a point of turning briefs down and terminating, because it was just like, if you're not going to embrace my brand, my
Yeah,
product as it is, then we're not right for each other.
right.
But you will think that agencies will be ahead of the game, right, on these things.
Yeah, it would be great if they were. And some agencies are, and they bring clients along, but in a lot of instances the client of course needs to bring their agency along. So but if the client isn't equipped, it's kind of like, in a lot of instances it's not going to be happening, right? So
Yeah.
how do you make sure that your agency partners or any like collaborators that you're working with share those values, and get on board with what it is that you're trying to accomplish from an inclusion standpoint?
So one, the obvious is I look at their work, right? What they have done with other brands, how they've partnered, how they bring their essence to life. And that's always a good indicator, but it shouldn't be all. One of my favorite exercises is to take them to a Zumba class. I make them all go to Zumba classes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to hear them talk about it. And I want to see what resonates. What are the sound bites that are coming out from what they're describing? And to me, that's when I get a really good pulse on they got it. When they're
Okay.
talking to me about, I had an agency that told me, she was like, I had this lady next to me, and right next to her, there was her her son's kindergarten teacher, but she was the CMO from Burger King. So they were in the same class. I'm like, she got it. She got it that in that place, doesn't matter. They're all the
Yeah.
same, and they're sharing that moment together, versus telling me, they were wearing this, we should change the color, like that's the surface. It's the
Yeah.
agencies that have to connect at a deeper level that will get it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that it's kind of forcing them to experience the brand the way that the people that you're serving experience it, because that experience is priceless, right? In terms of understanding and getting it and what it is that you're trying to communicate. So much of your brand is dependent upon your instructors who you all are training and part of the membership. And I forgot, how many instructors do you have worldwide? Have you
We
trained?
don't disclose that
Oh, okay.
number.
No, that's no problem. But it's a lot, right?
Thousands
It's a
and
lot.
thousands and thousands, yes, a
It's a
lot.
lot, right? So, how do you ensure that those instructors are living your values whenever they're in front of the people? Because they're like your front lines.
So we have in the 160 countries that we are allowed to train, we have what we call our Zumba education specialists. So these are the people that, go out into those markets to hold the trainings.
Okay.
Now, they themselves are the most diverse group you will probably see. They are a direct reflection of the brand. And when they hold those sessions, not only is this diversity spoken about in the actual training, but it's also brought in to the product and how the product is delivered. So I am lucky that I work with a product that leads to that conversation naturally, because we're going to be talking about music, and by music we're going to be talking about rhythms, and rhythms are from different places and different
Right.
countries and different cultures. And one of the things that people love the most about Zumba classes is that it's a place they come to discover that music. So you will talk about salsa, you will talk about hip hop, you will talk about EDM, you will talk about everything. And that kind of already leads itself to that community inclusiveness conversation that then naturally happens.
Yeah.
But I think more than that, it's also before every training, they start with a 1 hour Zumba class. That's what they do for 1 hour. And it's like an amazing class because these people that trains them are amazing instructors. And at the end of that class, there's always a moment of like a kumbaya moment kind of thing where you come together and you hug. And so it starts there, that sense of embracement, acceptance, community. We start fostering this from the very first hour you walk into a training.
Very cool. Very cool. Years ago, I was talking with someone and they asked me a question that I know what my initial thought was when I heard it, but I want to hear your perspective. They said, because you just mentioned like the music that's used in Zumba, it brings together so many different cultures. And the question was, am I participating in cultural appropriation by going to Zumba class from, engaging with all this music and this culture because it's not my own? So I wanted to hear what your initial thoughts were.
No, I think you are discovering and enjoying the diversity of a world that's full of music. And I think what it is good about Zumba class is that we will give you credit to where that music is coming from. So this
Yeah.
is coming from Cali, Colombia, where the drums were brought in by the African slaves. And
Yeah.
like we will enrich. And in our training, we have an on-demand training that's available today. We have sections that talks about historically where this
Nice.
music comes from. All music, right?
Yeah.
Also when we talk about house and EDM, we are going to give the background in Chicago, like how it also. So it's I think there's absolutely nothing wrong and it should be encouraged to discover and enjoy. But educate myself and be curious about it, make people curious about it, because you can't educate people about everything, but if
Yeah.
you make them curious, they will go out and they will themselves find the answers and find the inspirations, right?
Yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree. All right. I want to switch gears a little bit. And I'm curious because you've been all over the world and I'm sure you've had a ton of experiences as a consumer. Can you tell me about a time where a brand made you feel like you belonged?
It's a good question. I'll tell you a time where a brand really made me cry, and it must have been the hormones too, but big time, and it hit me hard. Are you familiar with that campaign in the UK, This Girl Can? That movement that
No,
was put together by
no.
the government. So we're gonna end this podcast and you're gonna go check it out.
Yes, yes.
So it started, if I'm not mistaken, around 2013. It was a campaign that was put together by the Gov in the UK. And the primary mission was to get girls to exercise and to move and to work out, because the results of a survey were showing that women, or young girls, didn't feel like they were welcome in sports, right? And they didn't understand that there were opportunities for them in sports. And not only, it wasn't just about female, there was a lot about gender identity that at that time was making its way. There was a lot about race as well. And I think it's one of the few very successful campaigns where they managed to blend these things together around going back to that common need, common consumer insights that people wanted to be able to, women wanted to be able to participate in sports more, but didn't see it as a possibility for them. And I remember watching the ad, and the ad, now think about it, this is 2015, so a little while back, was shot UGC style, which at the
Okay.
time wasn't very common. Not everybody was doing it. And it showed all the perfect imperfection of women, of the girls, of this girl can. And I just had my little girl. I had just given birth to Maya.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, this is the world I want for her. I want her to think that, if she's a little chubby or she doesn't matter, like, that she can practice whatever sport she wants. She can be whatever it wants that she can. And I think that's one of the campaigns that has stayed with me the longest, for the creativity and the execution that I think was spot on, but also for the time in my life where, it was released.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to go out and have a look, and I'll probably prepare myself to get a little choked up as well. And I'm going to drop a link to it in to the video in the show notes so everybody else can have a look as well. This has been so much fun and super insightful, Carolina. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you, Sonia.
Any parting words of wisdom for marketers and business leaders who want to do better about being inclusive in their marketing and making it just the way marketing is done for their brand?
Well, I think you nailed it in the beginning when you said stay close to your consumer. Like it sounds cliche, but it's so easy. Today everything we track is how many clicks, the open rate, and the conversion, and where did they lose. And you're making these assumptions, and you have to. I get it. That's how we plan the budgets. That's how we spend the money. But in my case, go to the class, talk to them before, talk to them after. Go to the supermarket, see how they're behaving, watch them everywhere at all times. Because if you lose the human connection and they become just a click, then I believe you're missing the future, you're missing the innovation with them, you're missing the conversation, and that's never a good thing. So just stay close, make the time, which is the difficult piece.
Yeah, it won't steer you wrong. It's going back to the basics, right? And so I think sometimes we get so sophisticated that we forget the basics, and it shows.
Very true.
Very cool.
Very true.
Carolina had so many cool things to share. I so enjoyed that conversation. I hope you did as well. I'm super curious. What about the things that she says and how they're applying inclusive marketing to the Zumba brand is a key takeaway for you that you'd like to think about applying in your own business? Shoot me a DM, send me an email. Let's continue the conversation. If you like this show, I would so appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review for it in your podcast player of choice. It really does go a long way toward helping more people discover the show. Also, do share it with your friends, colleagues, and your network. I like to think these little actions go a long way toward helping more people be inclusive, and that's just a good thing. Are you getting the Inclusion in Marketing newsletter? If not, really, what are you even doing? Each week I send news, stories, tips, insights, and other good stuff to help you build an inclusive brand that attracts and retains a bigger, more diverse, and fiercely loyal audience. Go to inclusioninmarketing.com/newsletter to get signed up. I'll also drop a link to it in the show notes for you. Until next time, remember, everyone deserves to have a place where they belong. Let's use our individual and collective power to ensure more people feel like they do. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you soon.